Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that nothing in your life makes sense, not the rules you follow, not the people you trust, not even the ground beneath your feet. You're trapped in a world where every door leads to another locked corridor, where the harder you try to understand, the less clear everything becomes. This is the Kafkaesque. Franz Kafka's work has become synonymous with this unnerving feeling of absurdity, a profound, existential disorientation that permeates modern life. But Kafka wasn't just writing fiction. He was reflecting the deep struggles of the human condition, struggles that we all encounter at some point, navigating a bureaucratic maze, feeling alienated from the people around us, or grappling with the bigger questions of why we're here at all. His stories don't offer answers, but they do something even more powerful. They make us feel seen. In today's video, we're diving deep into the philosophical world of Franz Kafka. We'll explore how his personal experiences shaped his groundbreaking ideas, why his work continues to resonate in our modern age, and how his philosophy provides a way to confront life's most confounding questions. What does it mean to face a world that refuses to explain itself? How do we persist when everything feels futile? And why, despite all the chaos, do Kafka's stories leave us with a peculiar sense of hope? By the end of this journey, you might just find that Kafka's world, though bizarre and unsettling, is eerily familiar. It's the world we live in every day. Stay with me as we untangle the complex, fascinating, and deeply human philosophy of Franz Kafka. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video if you enjoy thought-provoking content. Subscribe to the channel for more explorations into philosophy, literature, and the human condition. And if Kafka's world sparks something in you, share this video with friends who might feel the same. Let's dive in. Franz Kafka's philosophical world is one of quiet yet profound despair, a place where human beings struggle against forces too vast, too senseless, and too indifferent to ever fully comprehend. His work doesn't offer solutions or even the promise of understanding. Instead, it illuminates the raw truth of existence itself, messy, absurd, and at times, downright cruel. To grasp the weight of Kafka's ideas, it's essential to explore not just his writing but the life and questions that fueled it. Kafka, like a fragile bridge, connects the stark nihilism of Nietzsche, the rebellious absurdism of Camus, and the existential angst of Sartre. Kafka's questions are not the loud, dramatic kind that demand answers. They are quieter, but no less haunting. Why are we here? What is the point of our struggles when the world seems so senseless? Do we persist despite the futility, or do we surrender to it? These questions didn't just frame his writing, they shaped his existence. Kafka was not a man removed from the absurdity he described. He lived it every day. Born in 1883 in Prague to a domineering father and a reserved mother, Kafka's upbringing was steeped in tension. His father, Hermann Kafka, was a self-made businessman who embodied strength, confidence, and material success. He was everything Franz was not. Kafka's frailty, both physical and emotional, was a constant source of disappointment to his father. Their relationship became a central wound in Kafka's psyche, one that never truly healed. It's not hard to see the echoes of this paternal authority in Kafka's works, where protagonists often find themselves crushed by systems or figures of power they cannot reason with or escape. This sense of powerlessness was not confined to Kafka's home life. It extended to his professional world as well. Trained as a lawyer, Kafka spent much of his short life working in bureaucratic environments, first in a law office and later at an insurance company. These jobs were not fulfilling. They were draining. Kafka was surrounded by mountains of paperwork and caught in the web of complex, impersonal systems that seemed designed to stifle creativity and individuality. If his father was a personal oppressor, then bureaucracy became his societal one, a faceless, suffocating force that mirrored the absurdity of existence itself. And yet, Kafka didn't rebel in the way one might expect. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't rage against these injustices or try to dismantle the systems he despised. Instead, he observed. He wrote. Kafka's characters, whether it's Gregor Samsa waking up as an insect in The Metamorphosis or Joseph K. navigating a bewildering trial in The Trial, don't fight the absurd. They endure it. Their struggles are not heroic, but they are deeply human. They stumble, falter, and fail, but they don't stop trying. There's something profoundly tragic yet oddly comforting in that. It's as if Kafka is telling us, yes, the world is absurd. No, you may never make sense of it, but you keep going anyway. This quiet persistence sets Kafka apart from someone like Camus. Camus, in works like The Myth of Sisyphus, calls for rebellion against the absurd. He frames life as a struggle to impose meaning on a meaningless world, likening it to the Greek myth of Sisyphus, who endlessly rolls a boulder uphill only for it to roll back down. For Camus, the act of rebellion, continuing to push that boulder, is where life's value lies. Kafka, on the other hand, doesn't seem to believe in rebellion. His characters don't fight the absurd, they are consumed by it. Yet, even in their failure, there's a peculiar kind of dignity. They act not because they believe they can succeed, but because they can't help themselves. It's an almost instinctive reaction to keep moving forward, even when there's no hope. When compared to Sartre, Kafka's philosophy feels less structured but no less impactful. Sartre's existentialism revolves around the idea of radical freedom, the notion that we are condemned to be free, to define ourselves in a world devoid of inherent meaning. Kafka's characters, however, do not experience this freedom. They are trapped by systems, by expectations, by their own minds, and yet, their struggles resonate with Sartre's insistence on authenticity. In a way, Kafka's protagonists are painfully authentic. They are raw and exposed, navigating a world that refuses to explain itself. Perhaps what makes Kafka's philosophy so compelling is its honesty. There's no sugarcoating, no attempt to make the absurd more palatable. Kafka presents life as it is, confusing, frustrating, and often deeply unfair. But within that bleakness lies a peculiar kind of solace. Kafka doesn't offer us a way out of the absurd, but he gives us a mirror in which to see ourselves. He shows us that we are not alone in our struggles, that the feelings of alienation and confusion we experience are not unique but universal. Kafka's philosophy isn't about grand solutions or dramatic revolutions. It's about the quiet persistence of living, even when life feels incomprehensible. It's about finding meaning, not in triumph, but in the act of continuing. Kafka teaches us that it's okay to feel lost, to question, to stumble. In fact, it's human, and in a world as absurd as ours, perhaps that's enough. What does it mean for something to be Kafkaesque? The term has become so deeply ingrained in our culture that it's often used to describe anything complicated, frustrating, or absurd. But Kafka's world is more than just bureaucratic nightmares and bizarre twists of fate. The Kafkaesque isn't merely about convoluted systems, it's a lens through which we see the absurdity of existence itself. It captures a reality where people, desperate for meaning and control, are met with indifference, confusion, and, often, futility. At its core, the Kafkaesque asks a simple but chilling question. What happens when the world makes no sense, and we are powerless to change it? To understand the Kafkaesque, it's helpful to start with the idea of absurdity. In Kafka's world, absurdity is not just the bizarre or nonsensical, it's the deep disconnect between our desire to make sense of the world and the world's refusal to cooperate. Human beings are meaning makers. We crave order, explanations, and purpose, but Kafka's stories remind us, over and over again, that the universe doesn't owe us any of these things. It is chaotic, indifferent, and unresponsive to our demands for clarity. Take The Trial, one of Kafka's most famous works. The protagonist, Joseph K., is arrested one morning without explanation. He isn't told what crime he's committed or even who has accused him. Throughout the novel, he navigates a labyrinthine judicial system, trying to clear his name, but the process is absurdly opaque. He's shuffled between nonsensical hearings, cryptic officials, and endless bureaucracy, all while never understanding the charges against him. By the end, Joseph K. is executed, still clueless about what he did wrong. The absurdity here isn't just in the judicial system's inefficiency, it's in the way it mirrors the human condition. Like Joseph K., we find ourselves thrust into a world we didn't choose, governed by rules we don't understand. And no matter how hard we try to navigate it, the answers we seek often remain out of reach. This sense of absurdity is not just confined to systems like law or government. It's also deeply personal. In The Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa wakes up one morning to find himself transformed into a giant insect. There's no explanation for how or why this happened, it just is. Gregor's immediate concern isn't the existential horror of his transformation, but the practical implications. How will he get to work? How will he support his family? His boss and relatives don't react with sympathy or understanding. Instead, they view him as an inconvenience, a burden. Over time, Gregor becomes more alienated, not just from his family, but from his own humanity. He dies alone, discarded and forgotten. What Kafka captures so poignantly in these stories is the feeling of being out of place, not just in society, but in your own skin. This alienation is a central theme in his work. His characters often find themselves isolated, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they simply don't fit into the world's expectations. This is the essence of the Kafkaesque, the sense of being trapped in a situation where you're constantly judged, misunderstood, or ignored, and where escape feels impossible. Alienation, however, doesn't just operate on a personal level in Kafka's world. It extends to society as a whole. Modern life, with its endless systems, hierarchies, and rules, often reduces individuals to mere cogs in a machine. Kafka understood this intimately. He spent much of his adult life working in bureaucratic jobs, dealing with paperwork and regulations that seemed designed to dehumanize. His writing reflects this experience, showing how institutions, whether governments, corporations, or even families, can strip people of their identity and agency. In Kafka's universe, you're not a person, you're a case file, an insect, a nameless figure in a vast, uncaring system. But Kafka's work also goes deeper than alienation and absurdity. At its heart lies a profound exploration of guilt and responsibility. His characters are often consumed by a sense of guilt that is never fully explained. In The Trial, Joseph K. insists on his innocence, yet he feels an underlying sense of shame throughout the novel. Similarly, in The Metamorphosis, Gregor's guilt isn't tied to any specific action. He simply feels responsible for his family's misfortunes, even as they abandon him. This ambiguous guilt is central to the Kafkaesque. It reflects a broader human experience, the feeling that we've done something wrong, even if we can't pinpoint what it is. Maybe it's a guilt that comes from existing in a world where suffering is so widespread and unavoidable. Maybe it's a guilt tied to the roles we play in perpetuating systems that oppress others. Or maybe it's the existential guilt of being alive, of taking up space in a universe that feels indifferent to our struggles. And yet, Kafka doesn't offer clear answers or resolutions. His stories don't end with triumphs or revelations. They end with silence, ambiguity, and often death. But this lack of resolution is precisely what makes the Kafkaesque so powerful. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that life doesn't always make sense, and that's okay. The struggle itself, Kafka seems to suggest, is what defines us. The Kafkaesque isn't just a reflection of external systems or societal structures. It's a reflection of the human condition. It's the feeling of grappling with a world that refuses to explain itself, of striving for meaning in the face of chaos. It's about living with the tension between our desire for order and the universe's relentless unpredictability. In many ways, Kafka's philosophy aligns with the existentialist ideas of thinkers like Camus and Sartre. But where Camus encourages rebellion against the absurd and Sartre emphasizes the freedom to define one's own meaning, Kafka takes a different path. He doesn't ask us to rebel or redefine. Instead, he invites us to sit with the absurd, to acknowledge its presence, and to continue moving forward despite it. There's a quiet resilience in Kafka's characters, a refusal to give up even when the odds are insurmountable. They don't conquer the absurd, they endure it. Kafka's work reminds us that life isn't always about finding answers. Sometimes, it's about learning to live with the questions. The Kafkaesque isn't something to escape or fix, it's something to experience, to feel, and, ultimately, to accept. because in its strangeness and senselessness, it mirrors the world we all inhabit. And perhaps, by embracing the Kafkaesque, we can find a deeper connection to ourselves and to each other. In Kafka's universe, absurdity isn't just an obstacle, it's the backdrop of human existence. His stories portray a world where meaning is elusive, where systems are senseless, and where individuals, though determined, often fail to find resolution. Yet, in the face of such absurdity, Kafka doesn't advocate surrender. Instead, his characters, flawed and desperate as they may be, keep striving. This paradoxical persistence in the face of futility is one of the most profound lessons Kafka offers. It's not about winning, it's about the struggle itself. Kafka's approach to the absurd is deeply existential. He acknowledges the inherent chaos of the world, the randomness of events, and the limits of human understanding. We crave explanations, purpose, and order, yet the universe remains silent. Kafka's characters, like Gregor Samsa in The Metamorphosis or Joseph K. in The Trial, are caught in this tension. They want to make sense of their circumstances, but every attempt is met with resistance. Gregor wants to regain his humanity, but his family recoils from him in horror. Joseph K. fights to prove his innocence, but the judicial system is opaque and indifferent. Both characters fail, yet they keep trying. This is the essence of Kafka's philosophy. Life may be absurd, but the act of striving imbues it with a kind of tragic dignity. One way to frame this struggle is through the lens of failure. Kafka's protagonists fail repeatedly, often in humiliating or devastating ways. But failure, in Kafka's world, is not the end, it's part of the process. Failure reveals the limits of human control and understanding, but it also underscores the resilience of the human spirit. There's a peculiar kind of hope in Kafka's work, though it's not the conventional kind. It's the hope that comes from continuing to strive, even when success seems impossible. As Kafka's characters remind us, life isn't about achieving some final resolution. It's about enduring, questioning, and persisting in the face of the unknown. This perspective resonates strongly with the philosophy of Albert Camus, particularly his exploration of absurdity in the myth of Sisyphus. Camus describes Sisyphus, a figure from Greek mythology, who is condemned to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity, only for it to roll back down each time he reaches the top. For Camus, this endless, pointless task symbolizes the human condition. We labor and struggle, knowing that ultimate meaning or success may elude us. Yet, Camus concludes that Sisyphus is happy because he embraces his fate and finds value in the struggle itself. Kafka's characters share this determination, though with a darker twist. Unlike Sisyphus, they don't seem to find joy in their struggles. Their perseverance is less a choice and more an instinct, a deeply human refusal to give up, even when the odds are insurmountable. Kafka doesn't romanticize this struggle. Instead, he shows it for what it is: messy, painful, and often futile. Yet, in its futility lies a strange kind of meaning. The act of striving, Kafka seems to suggest, is what makes us human. It's not about succeeding. It's about continuing despite the impossibility of success. But why do Kafka's characters keep trying? Part of the answer lies in the themes of guilt and redemption that run through his work. Kafka's characters often carry a sense of guilt that feels both deeply personal and inexplicably universal. In The Trial, Joseph K. insists on his innocence, yet he's consumed by shame and dread. In The Metamorphosis, Gregor Samsa feels guilty for being a burden to his family, even though his transformation into an insect is beyond his control. This guilt is never fully explained, but it permeates Kafka's world, reflecting a broader existential truth: the feeling that we, as humans, are somehow flawed or unworthy, even when we can't pinpoint why. Kafka's treatment of guilt is unique because it's not tied to specific actions or moral failings. Instead, it seems to be an inherent part of existence, a byproduct of being alive in an absurd world. This existential guilt is something Kafka invites us to confront, not escape. He doesn't offer redemption in the traditional sense. There are no absolutions or happy endings in his stories. Instead, Redemption comes from facing guilt head-on, from acknowledging our imperfections and continuing to strive despite them. This idea of confronting guilt ties back to Kafka's broader philosophy of the absurd. If life is inherently chaotic and senseless, then guilt is part of the burden we carry as conscious beings. We may never fully understand its origins or resolve it, but in facing it, we affirm our humanity. Kafka doesn't offer a path to overcome guilt or absurdity, he offers a way to live with them. His characters remind us that even when the world is incomprehensible, even when we feel lost or unworthy, there is value in continuing the journey. In the end, Kafka's philosophy is not one of despair but of quiet resilience. He doesn't promise clarity or closure. Instead, he shows us that life's struggles, however absurd or painful, are worth enduring. There's a raw honesty in Kafka's work that resonates deeply with our own experiences of failure, guilt, and perseverance. His stories remind us that it's okay to feel lost, to question, to stumble. What matters is that we keep going. In a world that often feels Kafkaesque, perhaps that's the most profound lesson of all. Franz Kafka's philosophy resonates deeply in the modern world, where the struggles he portrayed seem more relevant than ever. His depiction of bureaucratic absurdity, existential crises, and the quiet resilience of human beings in the face of futility speaks to the challenges we encounter daily. Whether it's navigating complex systems, grappling with the overwhelming pace of technological change, or searching for meaning in a world dominated by materialism, Kafka's insights provide both a mirror and a guide. They help us confront our sense of powerlessness and find a way to persist, even when life feels Kafkaesque. The absurdity of Kafka's bureaucratic systems finds a natural parallel in the intricacies of modern life. Imagine standing in line at a government office, trying to process paperwork that seems designed to confuse, or consider the endless hold times and disconnected answers when dealing with a large corporation's customer service. These are Kafka's worlds brought to life, systems so sprawling and impersonal that they seem to operate for their own sake, reducing individuals to mere case numbers or account IDs. Much like Joseph K.'s experience in the trial, the process is often opaque, leaving us to navigate its labyrinthine structures without clear guidance. The result is a deep sense of frustration and helplessness, as though the system itself is actively resisting resolution. Kafka's insight into bureaucratic absurdity is not limited to governmental or corporate systems. It extends into our workplaces, where many people feel trapped in roles defined by routine and metrics rather than creativity or meaning. Kafka, who spent his career working in an insurance office, understood this intimately. His depiction of endless paperwork and meaningless tasks reflects the alienation many feel in today's labor market, where workers often experience a profound disconnection between their efforts and the impact of their work. The term Kafkaesque aptly describes the feeling of being a cog in a machine, where human individuality is secondary to the demands of the system. In such moments, Kafka's philosophy offers a kind of solace not by fixing these systems, but by helping us understand our place within them. His work suggests that it's okay to feel lost or overwhelmed by the absurdity of bureaucracy. The important thing, as Kafka's characters demonstrate, is to continue trying, even when the system feels unyielding. In acknowledging the absurdity, we reclaim a sense of agency, however small. It's not about overcoming the system, but about persisting despite it, finding meaning in our effort rather than the outcome. But Kafka's relevance isn't confined to bureaucracy. His exploration of existential struggles speaks powerfully to the modern era. Today, we live in a world saturated with distraction, social media, endless streams of content, and a relentless pace of technological innovation. These tools, while designed to connect us, often leave us feeling more fragmented and disconnected than ever. We scroll endlessly through news feeds, consuming information without fully digesting it, and yet we're left with an unsettling void. In this way, Kafka's portrayal of alienation feels prescient. His characters are isolated not just physically but emotionally, cut off from understanding and connection. Much like we often feel in the age of constant connectivity, this existential disconnection is compounded by the materialism of modern society. Success is frequently measured by wealth, possessions, and social status, creating a culture where people are encouraged to chase external validation rather than internal fulfillment. Kafka's work cuts through this facade, reminding us of the hollowness of such pursuits. His characters rarely achieve the goals they strive for, and when they do, the results are often underwhelming. This mirrors the modern phenomenon of achieving a milestone, whether it's a promotion, a new car, or a larger house, only to find that the satisfaction is fleeting. Kafka exposes the futility of chasing meaning through external means and challenges us to look inward instead. Amid these struggles, Kafka's philosophy offers practical lessons for navigating the absurdity of modern life. One of his most enduring insights is the idea that life doesn't have to make sense for it to be meaningful. In Kafka's world, meaning isn't something handed down by the universe, it's something we create through our actions and persistence. This aligns with existentialist thinkers like Camus, who argued that we must embrace the absurd and live fully despite it. Kafka's characters don't always succeed in this, but their refusal to give up serves as a quiet rebellion against despair. They remind us that the act of striving itself can be a source of meaning, even when the outcome is uncertain. In practical terms, this means accepting that life's challenges may not always have clear solutions. Bureaucracies may remain inefficient, technology may continue to overwhelm, and material pursuits may fail to bring lasting happiness. But rather than retreat into cynicism or despair, Kafka encourages us to engage with these realities head-on. His work suggests that by acknowledging life's absurdities, we can approach them with a sense of humility and resilience. We may not be able to change the systems we inhabit, but we can change how we respond to them. Living with absurdity also requires a shift in perspective. Instead of viewing setbacks or failures as evidence of our inadequacy, we can see them as part of the human experience. Kafka's characters, despite their struggles, never stop trying. They remind us that persistence is an act of defiance against a world that often feels indifferent. This perspective can be profoundly liberating, allowing us to focus on the journey rather than the destination. Ultimately, Kafka's philosophy challenges us to embrace life in all its complexity. He doesn't offer easy answers or neatly wrapped solutions. Instead, he invites us to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, to find beauty in the struggle, and to connect with others who share in our experience of the Kafkaesque. His work is a reminder that, even in the face of bureaucracy, alienation, and existential doubt, we are not alone. The absurd may be inescapable, but it doesn't have to define us. By engaging with it, we can carve out spaces of meaning and connection, even in the most Kafkaesque of worlds. In today's world, Kafka's philosophy feels less like a relic of the past and more like a survival guide. His insights into absurdity, alienation, and persistence are as relevant now as they were in his time. They encourage us to confront the systems that confound us, to reflect on the ways we search for meaning, and to keep moving forward. No matter how absurd life may seem, Kafka reminds us that while we may not have control over the world, we have control over how we live within it, and sometimes, that's enough. Franz Kafka's philosophy endures not because it explains the world to us, but because it holds a mirror up to our own humanity. Kafka's works resonate on a deeply personal level, capturing the universal struggles of alienation, absurdity, and the search for meaning. They help us feel less alone, especially in moments when the world feels incomprehensible and overwhelming. In his stories, we don't find easy answers or comforting resolutions. Instead, we find reflections of our own fears, doubts, and perseverance. That is why Kafka still matters. Kafka doesn't try to fix the absurdity of the world. Instead, he invites us to face it, to sit with its discomfort, and to recognize it as an intrinsic part of being human. His protagonists, like Gregor Samsa in The Metamorphosis or Joseph K. in The Trial, are not heroes in the traditional sense. They don't overcome their struggles, nor do they reach some grand epiphany. What makes them compelling and what makes them relatable is that they persist. They try, they falter, and they try again. In their failure, we see our own struggles mirrored back to us. Kafka's work doesn't offer solutions, but it provides solidarity. It reminds us that we are not alone in feeling lost or powerless in the face of life's absurdities. This emotional resonance is perhaps Kafka's most enduring gift. His stories capture those moments of profound isolation and confusion we all experience, those times when life feels Kafkaesque. Whether it's getting trapped in a maze of bureaucratic red tape, feeling misunderstood by the people closest to us, or grappling with the meaninglessness of daily routines, Kafka's world feels uncomfortably familiar. He understood that these experiences aren't anomalies, they're fundamental to the human condition. And by giving voice to them, Kafka created a space for us to confront and process our own struggles. The timelessness of Kafka's philosophy lies in its universality. His insights into absurdity, alienation, and the human desire for meaning transcend the specifics of his time and place. Kafka's Prague was a city caught between cultures and empires, a fitting backdrop for his themes of displacement and ambiguity. But the feelings he explored of being out of place, of searching for understanding in an unyielding world, are as relevant today as they were a century ago. Modern readers may not navigate the same systems as Kafka's characters, but the emotions and experiences he described remain unchanged. Kafka's influence can be seen not only in philosophy but also in art, film, and literature. His work has inspired generations of thinkers and creators who grapple with similar themes. Nietzsche's philosophy of the eternal recurrence and the will to power echoes in Kafka's portrayal of characters endlessly striving against impossible odds. Camus, who famously described the absurd as the disconnect between our desire for meaning and the world's indifference, builds upon Kafka's foundation. In many ways, Kafka's stories are practical case studies of the existential struggles Camus theorized about in The Myth of Sisyphus. Artists and filmmakers have also drawn heavily from Kafka's sensibilities. The eerie, unsettling worlds created by directors like David Lynch owe much to Kafka's influence. Lynch's films, such as Eraserhead and Mulholland Drive, share Kafka's fascination with the surreal and the incomprehensible. Both Lynch and Kafka create atmospheres where the ordinary becomes uncanny, where reality bends just enough to disorient the viewer or reader. They explore what happens when the structures we rely on, whether social, personal, or psychological, begin to fracture, leaving us untethered and uncertain. The Kafkaesque also permeates contemporary literature. Writers like George Orwell and Samuel Beckett have incorporated Kafka's themes of bureaucracy, absurdity, and existential struggle into their own works. Orwell's 1984 and Beckett's Waiting for Godot carry the same sense of helplessness and inevitability that characterizes Kafka's stories. In these works, the characters' plights are not merely personal, they reflect the larger, systemic forces that shape human existence. But Kafka's relevance isn't confined to the realms of philosophy and art. His philosophy speaks to everyday experiences, making his work accessible even to those who don't consider themselves literary or philosophical enthusiasts. His depiction of bureaucratic absurdity, for instance, resonates with anyone who has ever been caught in the labyrinth of modern systems. Whether it's dealing with endless customer service loops, navigating complex immigration processes, or struggling with the red tape of healthcare and insurance, Kafka's world feels uncomfortably familiar. It's a reminder that our frustrations with these systems are not new, they're part of a larger, timeless struggle between individuals and the structures that govern them. Kafka's exploration of alienation also speaks directly to the modern age. In an era of hyperconnectivity, many people feel more isolated than ever. Social media, which promises to bring us closer together, often amplifies feelings of inadequacy and disconnection. The pressure to curate a perfect online persona can make us feel alienated from our true selves. Much like Gregor Samsa, who becomes a stranger in his own home after his transformation, Kafka understood that alienation isn't just about physical separation, it's about the emotional and psychological distance that can exist even in the most intimate relationships. Ultimately, Kafka's philosophy challenges us to confront ourselves. His work is not about explaining the world. It's about helping us navigate our place within it. Kafka doesn't tell us what to do or how to feel. Instead, he creates a space for introspection, for sitting with the discomfort of not knowing. and for finding meaning in the act of persistence. His characters don't provide a roadmap to success, but they remind us that the journey itself has value, even when the destination is unclear. Kafka's legacy endures because it captures something essential about the human experience. His stories don't sugarcoat reality or offer false hope. They confront us with life's messiness, its contradictions, and its absurdities. And in doing so, they help us feel less alone. Kafka reminds us that it's okay to struggle, to question, and to fail. What matters is that we keep going. In a world that often feels incomprehensible, Kafka's philosophy offers a quiet, profound comfort, the assurance that, even in the face of absurdity, we are not alone. This is why Kafka still matters. His work doesn't solve life's mysteries, it illuminates them. It doesn't offer easy answers, it helps us ask better questions. And in a world as chaotic and unpredictable as ours, that might just be the most valuable legacy of all. As we've explored today, Franz Kafka's philosophy isn't about solving life's mysteries, it's about confronting them. In his stories, we find characters who are lost, confused, and often defeated, but they keep moving forward, not because they expect to win, but because that's what it means to be human. Kafka's work teaches us that even in a world of absurdity, there is value in the struggle itself. His legacy endures because it mirrors our own experiences, the frustrations with bureaucracy, the disconnection of modern life, and the relentless search for meaning in a universe that refuses to cooperate. But perhaps Kafka's most profound gift is the reminder that we are not alone. The Kafkaesque moments in our lives, though bewildering, connect us to a shared human experience. They challenge us to embrace the chaos, to live fully despite it, and to find moments of beauty in the absurd. As you go about your day, think about the Kafkaesque moments you encounter. Whether it's waiting on hold with customer service or wrestling with the bigger questions of existence, remember that you're part of a long tradition of thinkers, writers, and dreamers grappling with the same struggles. Kafka's philosophy doesn't ask us to overcome the absurd, it asks us to live within it, with grace, humility, and persistence. If you found this video meaningful, please take a moment to like it. It really helps support the channel and lets us know you want more content like this. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into philosophy and literature, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And if Kafka's ideas resonated with you, share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of Franz Kafka. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and above all, keep going because, as Kafka reminds us, the struggle itself is what makes life worth living. See you in the next video.